You're like, you see my screen or?
Oh, yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Constitution podcast. I have a really exciting guest today and a super awesome conversation planned. I'm here with Deja Hartsfield. She is a Chicago native and she is a behavior analyst, but she works predominantly with kids, but she's also a sober behavior analyst who has her passion project and Instagram account of Radical Sobriety, where she talks about her experience navigating sobriety. And I can't wait to hear more from you about everything that's shaped your life, your journey with alcohol, and especially all through the lens of a behavior analyst. That's really cool. So, how are you today, Deja?
Yay! Hi! I'm so good. I'm so
Good.
pumped to be here. As you can see, I had to bring out Simba.
I love that.
The amount of times where I had Simba or the Lion King as a lead discussion in AA is intense. They're like, Deja, we get it. He was always king. And I'm like, come on, you just gotta find it in yourself. But I'm feeling so good. Thank you for having me. I feel incredibly just grateful and blessed. And yeah, I'm in Chicago or Chicago suburbs.
Mhm.
And finally, the weather is breaking. So I'm sitting as close as I can to the sun or the window. And I also have my plants here.
Oh, I love that. Look at your plant wall. The
Oh,
green.
yes. This is my little girl. She is
Nice.
actually, she's much older than me. She's like, I'm 29. I think she might be 30.
What's the
Um,
name of that plant again? Starts with an M, right?
oh, you got me. Hold on.
Oh my gosh, I know that a Monstera? Monstera.
It's something like that. Let's see. Okay. Pelton Peltandra Vir, Virginica. I don't
What?
know how to. I'm like,
You're
I
like,
don't
that's the
know how to
Latin
pronounce
name.
that. I'm like, hey, you sound fun and feisty. I love you.
I love that.
I literally just found out the name of it 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, I try my best to feel that I am closer to nature as possible, especially now that the weather is breaking and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
but yes, 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 I'm feeling good. And I forgot to mention, I guess I forgot to mention, I'm also an artist.
Nice.
I have all my little art here.
I love that. Nice plants, records, art on the wall. You're my kind of lady. I'm a house plant lady too. Um, and I definitely plants drew me in sobriety. I don't know about you, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely became a new hobby, gardening, all that.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of
Mm-hmm.
sobriety, that's kind of the crux of our conversation today is
Mm-hmm.
your own sober journey, your own experience through the
Mm-hmm.
lens of being an African American woman and kind of we were talking before we popped on about the social determinants of health and people not really realizing, there's a lot of factors that can shape addiction and health and just hearing about different people's experiences and how those contribute to like our propensity towards addiction or our propensity
Yeah.
towards like different health outcomes. And so I think it's going to be a really cool convo. So start with telling us about your sobriety journey and how did you get here?
Well, all right. So obviously was not expecting to be sober at 29,
Mhm.
29 and fine and sober. And that's very, very exciting. However, the journey to 29 and fine and sober, um, I almost like lost my life really. And I did lose my mind a few times. And what's interesting is that I didn't drink when I was in high school. And I love hearing other people's stories when they say that. I was like, yeah, I didn't do drugs and I didn't, I didn't drink and I didn't even cheat and da 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 da, like on tests and whatnot. And I was that kind of person. And so, you know, and that kind of student. So, obviously as a child, your whole identity is a student. So it generalizes to every aspect of your life and and especially how you view yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole concept of identity and whatnot. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I have to just get straight A's, and my specifically my grandparents have, are telling me like, do it because you are one of the only black girls in your school district, um, in your classroom. I was like, great. Well, great, you know. Um, and yes, I am in a predominantly white neighborhood. I will shout it out, Naperville, Illinois. If you Google it, you will see that it's probably top 10 places to live. And it's just like, ugh.
Mm-hmm.
But, so with that being said, the education system, I guess top tier, and relatively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I gotta do well, da 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 da. That whole story just turns out one thing develops into another, which develops into a few mental illnesses and whatnot, and perfectionism and anxiety, and just got to be fit into the good girl narrative,
Yeah.
because the concept of understanding, like, just when I say understanding, I don't mean like fully grasping this grand idea of racism, but
Mm-hmm.
just the little understanding of I am different,
Mm-hmm.
different, bad. That relation. I'm going to talk about relational frame theory a lot because that's one of my interests as a behavior analyst. But
You,
seriously,
can you share what that means for somebody who might not know? I actually have not heard of relational frame theory, so I would love to know too.
yes, yes, yes. So
Yes, yes, yes.
because I am still a nerd, I'm still very much involved with school and studying and whatnot. So I love teaching. So yeah, relational frame theory is basically like, how Einstein said everything is relative, even though he's talking about, the dynamics of like physics and,
Mhm.
gravity.
Yeah.
When it comes to association, comparison, difference, um, tall versus small, thin versus big kind of thing, what colors are, every sort of interaction we have of like identifying what something is, we need to learn it from something else. So we know what something is because we know what it isn't.
Right.
So from a very early age, we have those novel experiences and opportunities and social interactions of like, okay, even if it's unconsciously, seriously, because we don't need to know how things are related. It's just like, okay, if I know that, for example, my dad is an alcoholic, um, and I learned very early on, I didn't know what alcoholism was. Actually, I don't think I heard of the word alcoholism. Um, but I knew he wasn't around, and I heard that he was sick and something was up. And I equated that to him being a bad dad and he doesn't care. And that wasn't even when alcohol was associated yet. So think about it when I got into like high school and I heard alcohol, and then I started connecting the different relational frames of absentee, father, alcohol, because
Mm-hmm.
then I was getting older and people were starting to talk about it a little bit, and jail and recovery, um and then all, just different, yeah, just different relational frames. I eventually, it's very easy to learn that, okay, if A equals B, B equals C, that means A equals C. You know, you don't have to learn directly
Yeah.
that all of this is together. It's just like sometimes you're just like, oh, well, he's a bad person because he drank alcohol.
Yeah,
No one told
but
me
it's
that.
like a simplification of your understanding based on
Yeah.
in relation to each other, which seems like that would be a pretty intense experience being the only Black woman like in your school or like community,
Yeah.
learning like about yourself through this lens of not being in it being in like being different from everyone else around you.
And all of that is that just that example, that personal example I have with my dad is is just one example.
Yeah.
Like literally, like I said, everything how we learn to identify things in the world, in our world, is associated by something else. So, you know, that's why I started radical sobriety and whatnot, because I was interested in self-conceptualization and
Yeah.
how that comes to an understanding with that. But and that whole one, I'm gonna um the term stimulus equivalence is associated with relational frame theory. So just gonna bring that out there. It's a really fun theory, but you know, all of it is theory. It's a theory because I guess we can't exactly know when things click, when the
Mm.
dots connect. It just
Yeah.
happens,
Mm-hmm.
like language, you know? So that was my little tangent. So that whole concept and like understanding and whatnot of all these different things, I was so aware. I don't have any siblings. I'm an only child, and I felt like I was just too aware. And then of course you probably heard of, you know, us being called too sensitive and, you know, or too dramatic or like too maybe too quiet or like stuck up or whatever, like all these labels. Once again, it's like it's just straight up conditioning, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Now that I'm sober, I'm understanding that and learning that. But you know, as a teenager, I was like, this sucks. I hate feeling different. Like I just wanted to fit in and no boys like me because it was all white boys and they think I was cute, and I was like, ah. I was obsessed with One Direction too. So I was I'm like, I love me a good, you know, Harry Styles. I really do. And I just want to feel beautiful. Okay. And so I would literally try anything. And that's when I um had my first drink at 18, right before college, the summer before college, because I wanted to um I guess be ready for college. You know, like I'm like, yeah, this is what we do, right?
More programming, yeah.
This is what we do. I've seen it on the media, you know, like whatever it is, if whether it's Sex in the City and they're just having some wine and they're like talking about guys and da 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 da, like that's grown talk. Well, I want to be grown, you know, or you know, all this drama. And but it wasn't, I wasn't thinking about drinking. I wasn't associating drinking yet with my dad, like binge drinking. I wasn't afraid of it, ironically.
You know what I think that is? I think it's because we kind of have created, and it's definitely changing, but it's like we haven't made the problem alcohol. We've made it the alcoholic.
Mm. Mm.
And I think that is
Yeah.
why we're so easily able to separate, like, oh, you have a problem. And that's why people love compartmentalizing, like, oh, but you're an alcoholic, because it's not alcohol that's the problem, it's you. And that makes us easier to justify like our own relationship to it because we kind of stigmatize like the person with the problem.
Mm-hmm.
They just can't handle their alcohol, like he's a bad person, those types of things. And I feel like
Yeah.
actually makes us like compartmentalize the substance from the person. And for whatever reason, we choose to villainize the person. And it's an
It's
obvious reason
true.
so we can all like continue to indulge and not feel bad about it because it's not the substance, you know? But
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with me. What do you mean? This is a moral issue. Ah, right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that it's so true. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was like, I actually, as I said it, I'm like, wait a second. I was still very much willing to try alcohol. Like my friend picked up like pink, like lemonade Svedka bottle, and we drank it. Oh my God, I still remember it. I was like, this disgusting, just poison. But it was just us two, and we drank it, and then we went to the mall because why not, and I'm like, wow, like I feel the everything melting and whatnot that you probably hear often of this just euphoria and all the anxiety go away. And I still did not associate drinking to bad. It was still my dad, like it was still, I chose to think of him that way and not the actual substance. So very interesting. But so moving on, I had went to a small predominantly white liberal arts school. Shout out Augustana College. And they know who they are because I will talk about them. And this is just a whole general thing for university as well. The drinking culture in college has to stop.
Mhm.
It has to stop. It's one of the things I'm also passionate about because it's like, oh, it's just another preparation for the downfall, the event, inevitable downfall. But that's exactly what I did. I studied speech therapy. I wanted to go into psychology, but I did speech therapy in Spanish. And even though I did well in school, I was still drinking and it was still the same thing. I just wanted to fit in, um, and did what all the other people did and whatnot. And so I went from alcohol to wine to, or I'm sorry, from wine to beer to tequila to just everything. And I didn't care. I ended up doing poorly like the senior year of college. Um, and I'm glad that I graduated, but I still didn't think that I had a problem. I just thought I was depressed, which was true.
Mhm.
Um, but I was like, I'm just young and I don't know, like just still trying to fit into the different categorizations that a lot of people put themselves in. You are a senior in college, you don't know what to do next, so this is normal to feel this way. So
Yeah. Is
any
it
sort of
that kind of,
self-responsibility that I have, like drinking, brush it off.
would you feel like is that like kind of also like a nod to relational frame theory? Like you're just sort of like, oh, well, this is like the context of what it
Yes,
is rather than being like, I'm depressed. You're just like, well, no, it's just like,
yes,
this is the season of life, or, this is how I'm supposed to be drinking. This is how I'm supposed to
exactly.
be feeling.
Exactly. It comes down back to the categorizations and uh of why we do things. And we, like I said, we don't have to know. We don't have to know. We don't even have to know why we're motivated to do anything, like it just happens based off of the conditions and the context that you are in.
Mm.
And I'm so sorry. Hold on.
No, you're fine.
Can you hold on? I'm so sorry. My neighbor is screaming and I'm gonna close the window.
Oh, go ahead. I
Hold
can't
on.
even, honestly, I can't even hear it, but no worries at all.
Oh, I don't know what's going on out there, but some juicy details. You're like,
Oh
I
my
have
gosh, that
nothing to
reminds
argue about.
it
Ooh.
reminds me of there was like a trend at one point with a funny soundbite of like people screaming in the background and then the neighbors like pretending to like
Yeah.
water their plants out front. Like, oh, what's
Uh,
going
like I could feel myself drifting. That's why I was like, you saw me. I'm like, I
on?
can't. No, 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 not right now.
Yeah.
So going off of context, like I closed the window because I heard my neighbors talk. I choose not to close my window now. I could close my window now if my neighbors came through here, but there has to be some sort of trigger or um like uh I guess anything could be a variable, but a variable that evokes or elicits some reaction, right? So everything that we, and I say we because it's a lot of students, but especially me as a young Black woman in a predominantly white school, there were many triggers of the deep conditioning of I just want to feel seen, I want to feel heard, I want to that yearn for belonging and whatnot, and da 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 da. So it's a cycle, man. It was just, and then you get washed in the sea of oblivion.
Yeah. And probably just feeling like just constantly like slightly uncomfortable, I bet, even if I'm sure it was like conscious, but even subconsciously, you just
Yep.
be like, okay, like I'm different from most people around me. And that like little like feeling of being an outsider always on your radar, it's like keeping you slightly uncomfortable at all times. So then it's like, well, easy to self-medicate when you
Oh
feel
yeah.
like,
It's so weird, and it's there's too many people who give in to, and it's so easy, who give in to the self-destruction because of the shame. Um, there's too many people like that, and that's why I really really love talking about sobriety and radical sobriety and whatnot, because I'm like, we could change that little by little, like that's the real
yeah.
revolution. But you know um
Tell me what you feel like what does radical sobriety mean to you?
oh
Or what is radical about sobriety? Any way that
yeah.
you want to answer that question.
And what's funny is that I was overthinking that, and I was like, what does radical sobriety mean to me? It's like, because I guess it's the you when you're comfortable in something, it's like you don't really think about it as much. And so I'll be 2 years in August. And so I'm 19 months uh, in a few days. And when I think of radical sobriety, I think of a few different words. I think of being unapologetic. I think of, even though it's tough, but I do think of acceptance, you know. I think of generational health, you know. And so for radical sobriety, even though I'm kind of doing a mixture of behavior analytic, like a lens to it, I think anyone who chooses sobriety, ha- going back to Lion King, I'm telling you, always had the power within them. It is a disease, so it's always going to be within you, right? That disease. But then again, the power to choose differently. when you know when you know better, you do better, kind of thing. And going back to the shame and guilt that we feel every day from when we were drinking, the things that we did when we were drinking, I feel like that is the one thing people just can't live with. It's the shame. It's like, yes, at the bottom line, we can be sober,
Mhm.
right? But I guess it goes into the emotional sobriety, the spiritual work, the shadow work, the hard work, the looking at yourself and doing the damn thing and just saying, hey, you know what? although it is a disease and my brain is wired certain ways, but I will take accountability and I will do different and I will do better.
Mm-hmm.
And better, I will use better and not good because we know those are subjective. But yeah, I just think choosing differently to just better yourself, which then ripples to everything else. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't know it, just like how we don't know how we are motivated half the time to do anything, or all these unconscious decisions, subconscious decisions. Um, but being sober, we can choose that, and we could just choose, hey, I'm not the one to blame.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so true. And I feel like I definitely agree that choosing sobriety is a radical act in our society, and that in order for it to be sustainable, it does need to be radical because, like you said, it's really like more than just not drinking. It's this like deep overhaul of like our belief systems, even our physical health,
Yeah,
spiritual health, emotional health, all of these things like without kind of radically addressing your life in totality, it's going to be really hard for it to be sustainable. And the other thing you mentioned is like that idea of it being a disease, which I definitely think that there's like some genetic elements. And like once the physical dependency comes, there's like
mm-hmm.
that way in which it's like no kind of no turning back from getting to a physical dependency
Mm-hmm.
standpoint. But I also think that there's like I'm really big in epigenetics and the like convergence of factors
Mm-hmm.
that manifest genetic expression. And I feel like we have to acknowledge that there's like people who are disproportionately like affected because of like
Yep.
experiences they have with racism
Yep.
or different socioeconomic like status or access to health. Just like the experience of stress in our society on a daily basis is disproportionately
Yep.
affecting people in of minority like different in minorities. And so I feel like that is also something because sometimes I feel like when we talk about it as a disease, people think like, oh, you either have it or you don't. And it's like you
Mm-hmm.
have the predispositions, but like depending on your family, your upbringing, like
Context
your
matters.
skin color, like all of these
Mm-hmm.
and how you experience the world, whether you think it's like a safe place or not, like people don't realize
Yeah,
like not everyone is kind of starting at the same level in terms of like how their whole context of their life like sets them up for a more of a predisposition for addiction or not.
exactly. And when I said disease, I'm talking about the underlining, like just
Yeah, the
the,
whole picture.
right, exactly. But as just like you hit the nail on the head, I'm telling you, sis, like context matters. When you are saying that you are unhappy, um, with a circumstance because of inequality, you got to dive deep into it, hun. People who don't care, right? And so then obviously that will always have another ripple effect. But if you are unhappy with the circumstance because of inequality, then then that I feel like that is a way to have either open discussions about whatever the situation is and to challenge those unhelpful behaviors and thoughts that created these environments. Because most of the time when I try to talk about this stuff, it is it's all macro. It's all macro level challenging,
Like
like
systemic.
revolutionary work. So it's like it seems like, oh, like what's the issue? Like I can't like go to Congress and be like, what the fuck? you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
there's systemic shortcomings. I think that is really like important to address in the context of like addiction and overall
mm-hmm,
health and well-being, where it's like it's really not about the people specifically, it's about like the ways that we're all experiencing our lives differently, particularly because of like the ways the systems are flawed and I think in a lot of ways
exactly.
failing failing some people more than others.
Exactly. And that's one of the issues that I have with like the very common buzzwords of authenticity, um, and imposter syndrome and whatnot. And as I'm doing the work to like take a behavior analytic approach, because that genuinely helps me understand um, different contexts a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
But just taking that also from like just a human, just Deja, like my own conditioning. I I wish, I feel like that is, if you can look at the chessboard overall, like the whole chessboard, that in itself is radical, because looking at individual aspects of a story will not do you any justice. You will become, if we're going to go with the buzzwords, less authentic, because there, we have it just like in behavior. There's like brushing your teeth, for example. We teach the kids how to brush their teeth and whatnot and tie their shoe. If you look at the whole behavior chain of brushing your teeth, we know it's brushing your teeth. But if we look at turning the sink on, or maybe getting the toothbrush, and that little window of the moments, the little teeny tiny behaviors that create the bigger behavior chain, it's like, what does that even mean? Like, that doesn't make sense. That's the beauty of science, and that's the beauty of kind of just looking more into the real story. And so when I talk about the real story in a lot of AA meetings, I am either, and when I say the real story, I'm like, guys, this is not an individualistic problem, hon. Yes, we got to take responsibility, because I gotta, like, it's full of white women and or a lot of white people, and I'm like, yes, we do have to take responsibility for our actions and whatnot, but shouldn't we also consider the societal conditionings,
Yeah, the
some of
society.
the things? And they're like, I've never thought about it that way. And this is a month into my sobriety. I'm desperate for change, right? And I'm still thinking, it's funny how we're all in these rooms and everyone is saying the exact same words of perfectionism and anxiety and depression and imposter syndrome. And that once again goes back to relational frame theory. So I'm like, yes, we have different avenues on how we get here, but ooh, isn't it
We
funny
have a
how we
sick
have a
society.
similar definition of all this shit?
Yeah.
So what's going on here? I don't think it's us.
Yeah, right. I know. Do you know who Gabor Mate? I always say.
Yes, I
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and he just always
Yeah,
talks
I
about
have a
like, a sick society produces sick individuals and like and unfortunately like the society is sick, I think, in many ways that affect us all, but even more so for people different socioeconomic classes, different races, like, and so it's, I think overall like not the healthiest society in general, but then it's even like harder. And so
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like it's really hard. I feel the same way where it's really hard to look at the picture of like addiction and substance abuse without
Mhm.
looking at the system that this is stemming from, because you look in other countries doesn't quite have, like, there's definitely drinking culture and whatnot, but the self-medication and the escapism and the like general like perpetuation of just like discontent and unease
Yeah.
goes really high here.
Oh, for sure. Going back to how I was so depressed in college and whatnot, and was like, I need to get the fuck out of here, of the United States. I did. I moved to South America,
Mm.
and I lived in Uruguay for a year.
Did you get those earrings there?
Actually, I got these from Africa.
I like that. I've been like looking at them the whole time. Like, those are cool.
I was like, I would love to say yes, but I was like, no, I can't. But no, I have my Uruguayan flag here. It's around here somewhere. But um, no, even, and that's why, ooh, context matters. I'm gonna say it till I'm blue in the face, because it was the same thing. I took the same internal conflict that I had about, I guess, myself, um, from conditioning and whatnot, from America's society, and I brought it to this little country right below Brazil, and it was amazing. Amazing stuff. I got to meet Angela Davis. She signed one of my art pieces. Oh my God, hold on. I got to show it.
Yeah.
Hold on. If you don't know who Angela Davis is, you got to look her up. She's an amazing
Nice.
Black woman activist from the 70s and 80s and still on. She's a professor at UCLA, and she is down for the cause. And when I knew that she was coming, she ironically was there to receive an honorary doctorate from the University of Montevideo. And so I drew an art piece, and I was like, can you please sign it and whatnot? So, but that's a little side note. But I took everything that I've learned from drinking and American culture, and I brought it to South America. And I was like, okay, they drink wine and beer. Great. I still remember a couple of times where I'm like, y'all want to take shots? And they're like, what? Like, oh, they're like, it's like 10 p.m. And I was like, yeah, but we can like go all night. So they're like, okay, very strange. And but that's that's the real problem with America right now. And when it comes to the drinking culture, because a lot of the stuff I learned about drinking and smoking weed too. I mean, weed is legal in Illinois, and it's legal in Uruguay. So I was smoking all the time when I was smoking in college. Like I didn't care. But just taking that and then going back to we put ourselves in these dangerous situations, and then we develop the shame and the guilt and all this stuff, and then it comes back to the relational frame theory, and it's like I'm a bad person, and then this whole self-destruction thing, and I do have a choice. I have values, but apparently my own values I don't even like. Mm-hmm. And that is dangerous, and that is so frustrating. That's the real issue I have with this, because as Black women, whoo, child, I'm telling you, it is, I think of my mom, right? And she's single mom, and she had to deal with my dad, an active alcoholic. I say active because he still is. He hasn't gone on his journey yet. And I think about what she had to do in order to put me in the situations that I was in, to help me grow as a little girl and all that stuff. And I just get so emotional, and she is so soft-spoken because she is I feel like she's genuinely afraid a little bit to speak up. And
because of just the angry Black woman narrative.
That and
like projection.
Yeah, actually, yeah. She wouldn't say it. She's like, no, I'm just a little introverted, whatever you kids say. And I'm just like, no, Ma, like you deserve to take up space. Mm-hmm. Like I will defend you to the end of the earth. And she's seen me in some horrible situations when I did things, and she's like, Deja, what's wrong with you? And I said, I'm burnt out. And, and then I was like, I don't know what's going on with me. And now that I am sober, and I look at my mom, and I look at my aunts, and I look at just in general, my sponsee, like, she's not an alcoholic, but she's an addict. Black woman in her 60s, I believe, in her 50s, maybe. And she's told me stories, and she's like, I just don't know how to rebuild myself because I did this for 30 years.
Yeah.
And it kills me. That's when I say you choose sobriety, that's the radical part, because you can't look at sobriety as this whole thing. Sometimes you do have to look at it through the windows a little bit, or at least the small behavioral change. Because if you take it even 24, even if you take it 24 hours, that's too much. You will go insane. Let's take it like a minute, mm-hmm. Like just a little bit. And I tell my sponsee, I'm like, girl, like you inspire me. She's like, what? Like you're young and cool, and you all do all these things. And I'm like, girl, you have no idea. I I had to do I chose sobriety because I had to. And I never had the opportunity to live in a sober house and all that stuff, but she has. And hearing her story inspires the hell out of me.
Mm.
And I feel like that is what it's about, just uplifting women, uplifting Black women, uplifting Black men, just uplifting everybody. I'm telling you,
Mhm.
because if you go out your way and try to avoid talking about it and sweeping it back under the rug, you are just creating more damage and standards that
Yeah.
should not be standards.
Yeah, and I think uplifting all people too is like it's so important to within that like address like everyone's different experiences because I think sometimes like I don't know and maybe I don't know if this is like just my perception, but I feel like I bet in talking about sometimes like how your like experience of sobriety is different than like a white person or your experience of addiction
Mm-hmm.
is different than like a white person's experience of addiction. Like we should be able to talk about those and not like we have different experiences of our drinking and everything like that's just kind of what it is based upon our society and then bringing that to light and talking about it and sharing it it helps like
Mm-hmm.
people deepen understanding, deepen compassion, recognize that like we have disproportionate, you know, disproportionate challenges that can impact our drinking. And I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit because we had spoken about that idea of like addiction and social determinants of health and one and just dispro and addiction kind of and mental health afflictions as well, like
Mm-hmm.
disproportionately affecting minority communities. And like, how do we work on this? Or like, what do you think is the helpful route to sort of like, hey, like, definitely, I think like having more conversations like this, where it's just like raw, honest conversations where people aren't afraid of like saying the wrong thing or whatever, and just being like, wait, what's your experience of life like? And
Right.
that kind of stuff. But then what else can we do to address the fact that like a lot of people have a harder time with mental health, a harder time with addiction, a harder time with access to like things
Mm-hmm.
that are gonna provide them with optimal health. What are the strategies we can lean into to try to reshape? Like, how do we create revolution?
All right. So, um, just like how you can't force anyone into this lifestyle, and that's one of the hardest parts. What I tell newcomers and whatnot, and my sponsee, she's like, like I don't understand, like why you would do this kind of stuff, and I'm like, sometimes you just have to step back a little bit and let them try, um, but just know that you're there for them,
Mm-hmm.
and that in itself is a part of mutual aid.
Mm-hmm.
And I say all that because I want to emphasize mutual aid. So that example of her saying, or anybody saying, like, I don't know what to do. Like, if somebody else is struggling, they're going through withdrawal, and God, they've been in the hospital for a month, and then the bills are stacking up. Like, what do I do? Literally create your own definition of mental aid. If you can, I mean, that's what we do in behavior analysis in order to figure out how what a behavior looks like. And if you want to, even if you want to be a little selfish, if it's going to help someone else, and it's a really hard thing to help someone else and they don't want help, find ways to reward yourself when you fit that definition of mutual aid, whether that's charitable work, whether that's financial support, obviously, whether that's um, giving out, mental health resources. There was a friend that who asked me, she's like, where do I go literally for free mental health services? And I was like, free? I only know one. And it's a place out here And it's one of the only places I know within the United States that is completely free, and they give you food, and have not a practitioner, but a psychiatrist there,
Mhm.
and free counseling and whatnot, and AA. That was how I got my first AA meeting, uh, and, you know, whether that's like how you want to define like your own reward system, whether it's like, you know what, that felt good, giving yourself a pat on the back, kind of thing, whatever it is, just put yourself out there and get out of yourself,
Mhm.
really.
Yeah.
There was one I was gonna say. We are also a product of our environment, and if that's true, if we are literally a product of our environment, if the conditions are set up in ways that evoke certain behaviors and whatnot, then become aware of that and think about how you can come back into this control factor that we so desperately wanted when we were drinking. Because when I was drinking, I really wanted to be in control of my perception of reality and like emotion and pain and whatnot. So if we are a product of our environment, you can set up literally your physical environment and then internal environment as well, because your body is environment. It holds everything. So for you, yes, you can get out of yourself, but you can go to therapy, you could talk to a friend. So there's so many different ways of like um using any information that you have to help dismantle the stigma of addiction. And I mean, eventually, yeah, it does start with yourself. That's the radical part, but when it comes to helping other people, sometimes waiting is also mutual aid, because you can't force anybody. So that's why I said create your own definition of mutual aid. And it can be lists, it can be a paragraph, it can be anything, especially when it comes to how you approach sobriety in your own lifestyle, because it could be more spiritual, it could be more environmental, like with nature and whatnot, and higher power. My higher power is nature, because why not? But
Mhm.
yeah, despite of any nerves and like fear that you have, always give yourself a chance, because someone might execute it in a way that it might be better than you. If you have an idea, like just share with it. Share the idea.
Yeah,
Sorry, that was a lot.
I feel like so I'm interpreting it as really like twofold simplistically, like this idea of
Yes.
really working on yourself and your internal landscape because we can't really we can't really perpetuate positive change from a place of dysregulation within ourselves. And I'm a big proponent
Yeah.
as well. Like, I feel like, especially in today's like day and age, like everyone just outrage culture is so intense, which like there's a lot going on. So, I mean, I'm not surprised, but I also feel like we could all benefit from that inner kind of inner assessment of where we're at and the deeper healing work, whether you're sober or not, and then taking that energy and seeing like, how can I channel this into like one cause I care about? Like you mentioned, like, okay,
Yes.
how can I put, instead of just focusing everything externally and getting so depleted by the chaos of the world, it's like, all right,
Yes.
up your foundation on the inside, heal, do your inner work, get outside, do things that make you feel regulated, and then use that like positive,
Yes. The
build
essence
empowered
that you
energy.
bring will just radiate, and you won't
Right.
even know.
Mhm.
You always get shocked. Sorry to cut you off. I do
No,
this.
no,
I'm
you're
so,
good.
so sorry.
You're
But
good.
you always know, like, doing this kind of work you do, you always feels like, I didn't know I had it. Well, going back to Simba, didn't know I had it in me. I didn't know that I could help somebody. Or like, because that rock bottom is so devastating, and that desperation, sometimes you don't know how angry you are, you
Mhm.
know, and rageful you are. And ugh, allow yourself to just find different ways of channeling that as well. And that is also mutual aid for
Mm,
you.
yeah, yeah. And I think the more that we can pour into ourselves and kind of work through our own inner healing, the more capacity and bandwidth we have to do so for other people and share and kind of, and the more we can like open our eyes to the different inequalities and without being triggered or sort of like, and I'm speaking from my perspective because I think sometimes like you can think like, oh, well, like I'm not like a bad person. You kind of take it personally, like the idea of like inequality, or you can if you're not looking at things from like a more holistic, like healed, grounded lens. And it's like, okay, how can I participate in a solution here? How can I actually
Yeah.
like bring my best self? So I see like a lot of people, not even with anything like racially related per se, but just like current events wise, seems like people go straight to like social
Yeah.
media to like yell about stuff. And it's like, I feel like it
Mm-hmm.
might be best if you do some regulating of yourself first, and then you could actually like handle this issue or contribute to a solution in a meaningful way that's not just like adding to the noise around it and like heightening the anxiety and chaos we're all feeling. It's just so
I yes.
I'm like, heal yourself, and that is healing the world because you come to the world with a whole different energy. You come to the world with a broadened perspective. You come to the world with a more open mind and a compassionate heart. And like, I think that's what we need. Like, more of us need to focus inwardly before we focus on trying to fix things outwardly.
Oh, for sure. And despite of your political stance, seriously, despite of your political stance, I I would say like I don't care, but I do care.
Mhm.
But you know, wherever you are on the spectrum, for your political activism work, um, just ask yourself two questions. How obedient am I for what I believe in? And ask yourself how complicit and compliant I am in this kind of work.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be political, it
Mhm.
can be with anything. Um, and that's what I have to ask myself when every day when I choose sobriety, you know, it's like, okay, I see the different approaches to sobriety and different lifestyles. And like you said, everyone gives their own opinion and how to do things. And like, this is how you do, you know, this is how you do sobriety and whatnot. But it's like, okay, but from my own experience, me, Deja, individual, like from my own learning history and whatnot, what was I complicit in? And how can I change that?
Mhm.
And to better myself. And just that simple question of, uh, you know, compliance, especially if you work in mental health administration and or healthcare or anything like that, um, because a lot of the regulations are macro level and the policies are in place, will have you just shouting to the rooftops, you know, like fuck insurance kind of thing, like
Yeah.
you know, there is I've seen it, and I'm talking to many people in the field who are working with the system to find a way to still go back to um, their own individual reward system to like find ways to help people.
Yeah.
Because that's the hard part. It's like, well, you see all the damage that, you know, every, you know, the 1% is causing, and it's like, what can I do? Once again, if we are a product of our environment, I will find a way to make myself feel better. To eventually, I go into work later today and I'm going to help a kid who has severe OCD try to just communicate a little bit, just a little bit, you know, about how he's feeling. And even if he says, I'm okay, I'm going to do good. I'm not nervous. I'm like, buddy, you can say all these words, just talk. You don't have to bite. You don't
Yeah.
have to scream at me. You know, it's okay. Like, I completely understand. But if you do, totally fine. you know? So it's, when I hate the word process because it's a buzzword, but it really is true. It is a process. Um,
Yeah, well, also too, the idea of like I really love what you said about focusing on your day-to-day impact and like we can get caught up in that idea of the 1% like you mentioned and kind of oh my God, like who are the evil people running the world? That kind of spiral when it's like, yeah, but what does that do? It robs us of our direct impact in our day-to-day, in our community, in the people that we engage with every single day. When it's like, why not just focus there? Focus, and that's what's honestly been like very soothing for me in the midst of like feeling like the world continues to get crazier is like I could get consumed by that, or I could realize that that's robbing me of my potential for impact.
Man, you don't have to react to anything you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's the whole aspect of radical. I mean, it goes back to radical behaviorism as well. And that, like, there's no such thing as free will because environment matters and context matters and whatnot, and all these different variables of why we do things. But if we want to go on a spiritual aspect, you can access liberation if if honestly, if you just
Choose it.
want to believe that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it goes back to philosophical understandings and concepts and principles since the dawn of time, like kind of thing. And it's dynamically changing every time. And, and as we're talking about this stuff and going back to mental health work and working with neurodivergent people, as a neurodivergent person myself, which I didn't know at the time, that's a whole other conversation. But learning some of the things, it's like, oh, I did have ADHD, haven't been tested, might be autistic, I don't know, BPD, maybe, I don't know, whatever term you come up with, whatever label you choose to identify, work with it and go back to the work of self surveillance.
Yeah. Ah, that's so good. I know. I definitely think, I fully feel like I'm a very sensitive soul. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that like element of neurodivergence, just being more highly sensitive was big part of what, why I drank too, and not realizing it and putting myself in situations that weren't really in alignment with my sensitivity or kind of ignoring what my intuition and sensitivity was telling me and gaslighting yourself. So,
Yes, 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 yes. Please understand that power and empowerment are not the same. People are in power, but they don't empower themselves or they don't empower other people. They're just powerful,
mm,
right? So I choose to empower people by empowering myself. And I guess I wanted that when I was drinking. That was my motivation. I didn't know, but going back to what we want as babies, is that sense of yearning,
mm,
of just belonging and wanting to feel accepted and just the social sciences of it all.
hmm
Um,
yeah,
and then I'm telling you, it's the ripple effect,
I
you
know.
know,
The ripple effect's been coming up a lot lately. I was actually, and it's,
really.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah, it has been. I was talking for you, it's was like the whole motto of my whole health and wellness coaching program I did like 5 years ago. But they just continue to talk about, the ripple effect of healing and how profound it is. And, a lot of people focus externally first, but when we focus internally first, that like, screaming from the rooftops about what people should or shouldn't do and stuff like that is like more of a leading by example and being the lighthouse, not the tugboat, is always what I say. And it's very powerful. And what did you say? Like, you don't have to react to anything you don't want to. That's like one
that's
of
powerful.
so good, right? Like,
Yes.
it just reminds you that like what you consume and how you choose to adopt a perspective on it and all that stuff, like is a choice. And it just made me think of how, like we could literally be in prison, and depending on the mindset we choose to be in, like we could have feel like our soul is liberated in that context. So I really kind of like that message as well. Like we can choose the our perception on liberation, like regardless of
Mm-hmm.
context.
Yes, 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 yes. And so anybody who is like sober now, I mean, that is a great way to um it's a beautiful thing, but also very dangerous because it goes back to power because it's like, well, I know it all and like I can write a book and you know probably hear that often. It's like, yes, okay, I see the light now. I have to tell everybody, but that's do the shadow work because then you can see it's like, okay, why?
Mhm.
Is it still that control thing? Is it the fear of rejection?
Yeah.
Like, instead of like, like for example, I and I had to think about this because I I felt it coming, but when I was talking about the whole like conditional aspect of or societal conditioning and these AA meetings and whatnot, and growing up in or just being in a predominantly white environment, I knew that I did the research. I was like, I knew that there was not many meetings for people of color.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm in the suburbs. Now I can go to Chicago. Hell yeah. So many. Great. But for certain reasons, I can't drive. Okay. So we'll just say I can't, access the city and Uber is expensive. And so I met another Black woman who is also my age and is sober and also in mental health counseling and saw her. I was like, you see me, I see you, we see each other, right? And I was like, maybe it's my Virgo energy, maybe it's that whole like, I just want to make a difference, make a change. Ended up starting an AA meeting out here for people of color.
I love that.
Whites can come, okay? Doesn't matter, but
We can.
you can participate and show up.
Oh my
Just think
gosh.
about how you're complicit and what you look like.
Systemic, yeah. It's
Yeah, just but it's called cultural connections, discerning independence. And I had started that a month and a half into my recovery because immediately I was that person. I was like, oh my God, like there has to be something out here. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And yes, I had that power like moment. I was like, oh my God, I am going to be in history books, like da 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 da, and trying to use that as a way to show people that I'm not a bad person because of my mistakes and what I did and all this stuff. But it's still going on and it's still a wonderful group. If you'd like, you can come. I can share with you the Zoom
it's a
information.
Zoom link. Oh my God,
Yeah, it's on
amazing.
Fridays at
I'd
7 p.m.
I'd definitely be down to party and listen in.
It's a closed me. I have it linked or on like it's on my Instagram page. It's like one of the things. Cultural connections. But it's one of the spaces that I feel very proud in. But I also have to think about, okay, even though I helped create it, I'm not, I
It's
don't
a
want to,
bigger picture. It's not like
yeah, yeah,
thing. It's like I want to have my impact. It's so funny actually. This
yes.
reminds me of I was just talking about this the other day, but I saw the funniest TikTok post, and it was this white woman, and she was like, it was a joke, and she's like, it said something like point of view, like you've found your way to Black TikTok. You don't know how you found your way to Black TikTok, but you've been here for years and you never want to leave or something like that. And
Yeah,
she's like, I'm just here quietly, hoping no one kicks me out. And like
yeah,
the comments were so amazing because it's just it was so refreshing because like all the Black ladies were like, you can stay.
yeah,
And then they're like, don't worry, we watch all your like gardening and do
yeah,
DIY videos on TikTok and your book clubs. And it was just like this hilarious like sisterhood where like the white women in the Black women were like making fun of each other for like stereotypical things, but in like such a lighthearted and like joyful way, and everyone in the comments like, this is giving me life.
Mm-hmm.
It's so
It's amazing.
so
It's like,
funny.
girl, I don't know how you go hiking like that, but you know what? I dig it. Good for you. I honestly,
What
I
are
would
you
try it.
doing out there? I'm
I've
like,
never considered skydiving, but you know what? I turned 30 this year. Fuck it. Like, white people shit may be on my bucket list.
WPS. We say WPS like with every, like I almost said that earlier, but I was like, I don't want to be off-putting by being like, is my yurt like WPS? Definitely WPS.
And that's one of the things I was a little nervous about for this interview because it's still that that underlining trauma of like, okay, I've always been the token black girl. You can look it up in
Yeah.
real term, and so I'm like, I just don't know. And with that one post about, writing about how I feel about all of this and my words getting misconstrued and whatnot. And I just want to, I just, that's where the fear comes in. And
Now we're getting,
because it's happened before. So it's like, well, but it's always going to be there. I know
yeah.
that. I almost died because I was trying to be complicit in white culture and whatnot uh, and all that stuff. And I just recently learned that I was anti-black, which
Mm.
is insane to say. And I really do hate saying it, but
What does that mean for you?
I did not really want people to see how black I was. I was trying to fit in with like, okay, like I'm gonna wear my Sperry's. I had silver like Sperry's. I listened to One Direction. Okay, still love them. All right. And I listen to indie. So I guess anything you can think of like, yeah, white culture. It's like, yeah, I'm in there too. Like,
Yeah,
just
like
ignore this.
yeah.
And then I'm like, wait a second, why? And that was really sad, because I was like, I love myself and I love my mom, but why am I
Trying
complying
to
with it?
fit into like white culture instead of embracing like who you are. And it's like I think there's like ways for us all to embrace like groups and communities that are, because it's like I would think inclusivity and it's all great, but then even I do like women's only circles, and some people have commented like, why is this gendered? And it's like women have a different experience of drinking than men. We just do. We have different forces, just like black women have different forces acting upon them that like contribute to their drinking in relationship to alcohol than white women do. And it's just like sometimes having those spaces for like that is nice because it provides you that community of people who are understanding the lens through which you're experiencing the world, and
Oh
like
yeah, people are always going to talk shit. There's no, I'm, and I learned this because anyone who's been in similar situations, we drink in order to feel. It's the negative reinforcement. We want something to leave in order to feel good. Something has to come in, and we have to take something away. So I drank, I consumed something, so I put something in my body to let go of fear. But there's always going to be somebody around us who's going to look at us and enforce different rules
mm,
upon us and how we need to do things, like in sobriety as well.
mm,
And um, even if as women just being sexualized, like there's nothing we can do,
mm.
but there is, and that's the beautiful part, and that's the imposter syndrome, and I'm going to keep putting quotes around it because I'm not an imposter. I
Mhm.
know I like myself. I'm pretty confident in my own intelligence and my ability, and now my sobriety and whatnot, and I think that's just put upon us,
Yeah.
you know um and that's the acceptance of these labels. But going back, if you can, that's the shadow work, and it sucks because it's exhausting, physically draining, emotionally draining, spiritually draining. um but just like one little sort of like revolution about yourself, you can see that in another person. I am now coming into terms that, you know what, my dad is not a terrible person. He he is sick, and he has been in and out of the system in jail his whole adult life. I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
So there's no way for me to like perfectly conceptualize this, you know. It's
Yeah.
just it is what it is because of his environment.
I
And yeah.
definitely, yeah, and I for sure, and maybe you can relate to this too, is like that idea, like the more you kind of work on your own shadow work and shortcomings and inner work and all the shit, you do start to have like more compassion for other people. And I just feel like that whole, like the whole healing process is really like a widening and broadening lens to like our own perspective and just like common humanity, and that we all share a lot of the same struggles, but like some more than others, but we can still kind of relate to each other and try to see things through each other's eyes a little more and not be like so limited by our singular experience, which I feel like is really like helpful and eye-opening to be like, dude,
Yes.
we all have different lived experiences that gives us all different different perspectives, and like we have to make room for all of that without like somebody being wrong and somebody being right.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And as I will say this, I'll end with this. Black women, if you're listening, be angry. Be angry, be
Never.
rageful, okay? Because the sense of this internalized rage um, is a development. That is a process. Yes, we are born with these emotions, but how everything can be intensified through life experiences, obviously. So we know, we know the truth, and not everyone wants to hear the truth. That's why that was another fear of mine about coming on this podcast, because we can talk about the truth, but or at least my truth. And truth is not everyone wants to accept it, you know, or listen.
Yeah.
So, you know, just be conscious about your anger. And Black girls that feel the shame and guilt of expressing that anger and feel like it is frowned upon by society, just know that you are valuable. You are valued, and you can display any emotion that you want. It can be passive, it can be passive aggressive, it can be aggressive. Just be safe. You know, I want to take up kickboxing. Fuck it. Why not? I don't care. But, you know, just be at least be confrontational about your own anger, because that will save you. Because I drank because I didn't know how angry I was. And then I became that person, that Black person who went to the all white AA meetings and was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, what? Why is no one talking about this? I became the Joker. I just started laughing, you know?
I love that.
You know, I'm like,
They
the
call it
school
like
to
you see
prison
it.
pipeline, like, we got to talk about this. And all
Yeah.
right,
You're like, and no one else sees these issues. Like,
right. Deja, I didn't even think about that. Of course not, Cindy. Of course not. You having your wine, mom. You don't get it. And that's my fault. I'm sorry, Cindy.
Cindy, it's all right. You got your lived
It's
experience
okay.
too, Cindy.
You
Suburbia Cindy.
yes, 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 yes. Justice system.
Oh, you're like, you need a little less WPS in this AA meeting. A little
Yes.
more truth.
I'm like, you're still rich. Oh, fuck.
Oh my
Whatever.
God, I love it. This is what I always, this is exactly what I was hoping that our conversation would evolve into, is just like that organic, like, let's just like talk about this stuff because, you know, it is. It's like, it's okay that you getting to sit with other people's perspectives and stuff. It's like really enlightening.
Well, I really appreciate it. You know, there's as we're learning and, you know, growing up in sobriety with anything, there's no tradition. There's no traditional. Yes, there's the AA book. Actually, I have it right here. You know, I have it because I choose to sponsor people, but I don't abide by it, you know? So I just take little things that I find that kind of helps me um, just stay aware a little bit. Whether, and I, like I said earlier, you know, my higher power is nature. It is not like the Christian God. I will take, and this may be, you know, unpopular opinion, but I'll take a little bit of every religion if I
Me too.
can. You know, if I can. I'm like, that's a good point. Why can't I use that? No one's saying I can't. Well, some people are, but I'm gonna take it. That's decent.
Yeah.
And
I'm
same with AA and other spiritual work.
I feel just the same. I'm like, I kind of like Jesus. I like God, my own version
Yeah.
of God. I kind of like Buddha too. And you know what? I think reincarnation is my vibe, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm this very similar. Like I've done a lot of like spiritual exploration and just kind of feeling out like what resonates to me the most. And um I'm not like a black and white thinker, I really think like I like to look at the nuance and hear different perspectives and experiences and like do my own research and make my own ideas of what this life is, you know?
Yes. Yes. Real quick.
Yes. Yeah.
When I say that nature is my higher power, I'm so serious. I'm trying to show you my tattoo because I'm that person too.
Yeah.
Never got tattoos until sobriety, but I got this tattoo and it's a strong woman surrounded by flowers. And
I love
I
that.
drew it and I was like, this has to be it because I have to be reminded. And then I also have a capybara tattoo because I
Oh,
love capybaras. This
yes.
is Pearl.
Oh, yeah.
So Pearl's also my higher power, you know, like and my flower, my plants. Like I see the change that they're making and ugh, it's
Yeah.
it's so corny, but I love it. You know?
It's hard not to draw inspiration and awe from nature. I think you start to have a little more faith when you see like this is all divinely orchestrated and it turns out just fine. And so maybe surrendering a little bit to the fact that there's something further
Yeah.
beyond us that knows a little more about what's going on here. Is
Yeah. It like this, you know, this whole like thing that we have to be in control all the time. That oh man, if
yeah.
Jesus, I'm telling you, if Jesus comes back tomorrow, though I swear the one thing he gonna say, he's like, just stop it. Just embrace your humanness, damn it. You
Yeah.
know, if he gonna be real about it, then be real about it. Because that's the one thing in most philosophies and religion is that we are not in control.
Yeah.
So
Faith.
uh and that's what alcohol was trying to have us do. So if if we're living in an alcoholic society in America, that means that's a bigger issue.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
means we got a lot of work to do. But
yeah. I know.
one thing we can
Well,
do is challenge these thoughts and say, I am kind, I am smart, I am okay.
yeah.
Like the kids tell me.
I love that. Well, I'm so grateful for you coming on, chit-chatting about with my white ass about
You're cool, man. You're cool. Embrace that. Embrace it. You're
Woohoo!
yes. Do a little shimmy while you at it. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's been really fun, and I would love for you to share where people can find you on Instagram and any other places that you would like people to find you.
Yeah. So as of now, Instagram radical underscore sobriety. I, this platform, I guess that's the perks of not having high expectations because I just wanted to talk. As you can see, I love to talk. Like, and and so maybe there might be a website coming. I don't know. I could see myself. I actually take my board certification exam in the next couple months, so I will be board certified behavior analyst, and that will open up a whole new thing because I want to use this
Yeah.
um, in in a systemic, practical way to help dismantle addiction. And and how we feel about ourselves in sobriety and whatnot. So if you follow me on Radical Sobriety, you will see that development and
Okay.
all that good stuff. And I do share my art there as well. I art helps me stay sober.
Yeah.
And so I do have my Instagram page there for my art page is arts_hearts. And yeah, I might pull up a blog. I don't know.
You're like, stay
Like this is
tuned,
the
honey.
fun part, like
Yeah. Well,
we'll see.
maybe when you get your board certification, you can come back on or we can chat. I feel like we were just getting started and like I feel like we only broke through to the fun shit at the end.
I
So we'll have to
know.
do another one. So, but thank you so much for coming on. I hope everyone enjoyed listening. Deja Hartsfield, radical
Mhm.
underscore sobriety on
Mhm.
Instagram. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.
Let us know if you
Bye.
have any other topics in this arena that you would like for us to chat about again at some point. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Bye.